Hi everybody and welcome back. In today's video, we're going to be talking about how to treat or get rid of anti-vinculin antibodies. Now, if you don't know what that is, if you don't know if this is something you should be paying attention to, stay tuned because I'm going to go over like a brief 1 to 2 minute synopsis of what anti-vinculin antibodies are and why you might want to treat these if you have SIBO or IBS. So, as you might assume, anti-vinculin antibodies, these are antibodies against a protein in the body called vinculin. And what this is going to do, if you imagine your GI tract, so we've got mouth, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, and colon. And I've drawn the brain up top because remember, the nervous system really runs the entire show. You can't do anything without a functioning nervous system. But what happens is part of the nervous system, sorry, squeaky marker, part of your nervous system called the autonomic nervous system branches out and it comes down here into the guts and it innervates or it controls your GI tract. So it comes down here and it branches out and it basically runs the entire show. So the part of your nervous system that we're talking about is totally not under voluntary control, but it is super critical and important for the function of your gut. So if you wanted to make, let's say, stomach acid, you would need this part of your nervous system to send the command. If you want to make pancreatic enzymes or bile, or if you want to run motility, or if you want to push food through your system, you need this part of your nervous system to do it for you. You can't sit there right now and go, okay, I'm going to move the bolus of food from the duodenum down to the jejunum. Ready, go. Okay, I'm done. You can't do that. Like, we don't have conscious control over this part of our nervous system, but it's super, super, super important. And going back to something that's very important for people with IBS and SIBO, one of many things that this part of the nervous system regulates is motility. And if we were to zoom in a little bit here, we would actually see that these branches of the vagus nerve synapse or connect with other neurons called the enteric nervous system, and then those are the neurons that are directly sending the signal to the small intestine and the colon. Well, vinculin is a protein that's found in the nerve endings at that secondary neuron. But for simplicity's sake, I'm not going to draw the other neuron. I'm just going to draw it as one big neuron just for the sake of simplicity. Just know that that's incorrect. But so vinculin is basically found here on these nerves that are telling the small intestine in particular to regulate motility. Well, when you start attacking vinculin and your immune system starts chewing up that protein, now you don't have that part of your nervous system working as well as it could, and your motility suffers as a consequence. Now, anti-vinculin antibodies seem to be secondary to food poisoning for most people. So when you have this type of autoimmunity, it's called post-infectious IBS, or in my opinion, we should be calling it post-infectious SIBO because about 90% of people with anti-vinculin antibodies will go on to develop SIBO because, again, you need motility to keep the bacteria down in the colon where they belong, and without that motility, that favors the growth of SIBO. So as I typically would depict SIBO, if you imagine this would be a normal scenario where the bacteria are confined to the colon, versus SIBO, you have some overgrowth of bacteria into a part of the bowel where you don't want them to grow. The answer to getting rid of those bacteria is good functioning motility. You could brush all that crap out of the intestine and brush it back down to the colon where it belongs. So rehabbing the system and trying to get rid of these anti-vinculin antibodies becomes really, really important for people who believe that their IBS or their SIBO symptoms were the result of food poisoning. And I will share something interesting too, and I think this is quasi off the record. I don't know if he's really made this super public yet, but I remember a few years ago, Dr. Pimentel, who's one of the guys that's doing a lot of the research on this post-infectious IBS thing, by the way. A couple of years ago, I remember him speaking in a webinar for healthcare professionals. And he was saying that they basically did an experiment on, I forget if it was an animal model or if it was people. I think it was human beings. But they did an experiment where they basically had, I forget the name of the technology or the procedure, but they basically had these subjects, who I believe were human beings, but I can't swear to that. They had their blood removed from their body, they filtered out the anti-vinculin antibodies, and then they put the blood back into their body. So picture kind of like dialysis, but a little bit different. That's like the closest I can get to it, explaining it to you. So what they did was they physically, forcefully removed the anti-vinculin antibodies. They gave them back the rest of their blood, and they sent them packing. They sent them home. And what was wild is Dr. Pimentel said that these people were basically cured of their IBS and SIBO symptoms for a while, but the symptoms kept coming back, and the anti-vinculin antibodies eventually came back. And he basically shared this, and he said that they weren't going to be publishing this particular study, and he said that it was because he didn't want the SIBO community going in a direction of like doing a lot of research on this expensive and invasive medical procedure in hopes of curing SIBO when it was not a long-term solution, and that it was potentially very costly and dangerous for the patient, which I can respect. I also wonder if it would have gotten funding, because honestly, like, I think that on some level, funders would understand that that's not a really viable long-term solution for 10-20% of the population. But I digress. So per his group's investigation, it seems that getting rid of the antibodies and getting rid of this attack on vinculin seemed to at least temporarily cure people of their IBS and SIBO symptoms. So it begs the question, how can we get rid of these antibodies? Now, if this was the conventional medical world, if I was, if I was an MD working at a hospital or doing research, we would probably think about things like trying to neutralize the antibodies, or again, filter them out of the blood somehow. But because I'm in the world that I am, and I'm in this hippy-dippy functional integrative medicine sphere, my first thought goes to treating it like it's an autoimmune condition, right? Because you have antibodies against self-tissue. At the end of the day, that's actually not that different from treating Hashimoto's or rheumatoid arthritis or multiple sclerosis or ankylosing spondylitis. You get the idea. There are all of these autoimmune conditions that we know about. And we know that taking a holistic, integrative approach to these conditions is very, very helpful. And we know that we've seen numerous cases and numerous studies where we can get thyroid antibodies to come back down, or we can get other self-tissue antibodies to come back down if we treat the body holistically. But there are a couple of things that I will point out that I think are more critical to this conversation, particularly with the target tissue in mind. So as kind of a starting point, I will share, when I am helping somebody manage or treat autoimmunity, I would say about 80 to 90% of the work ends up being very similar from person to person. It almost doesn't matter what type of autoimmune disease you have. What matters to me is, do you have autoimmune disease at all, period? And then we can move on from there. But like the difference between rheumatoid arthritis versus Hashimoto's versus Graves versus whatever, it almost doesn't matter at the end of the day. And again, the reason is because the fundamental problem, so I almost said functional and then that didn't work. The foundational problem here is that your immune system is attacking something it shouldn't be attacking. So 80% or 90% of your focus needs to be on the immune system and things that would irritate or perturb or anger the immune system and keep it rallied up. And then 10 or 20% of your time could be focused on the target tissue. Now, if we think about autoimmunity, or if we think of the immune system, so here I'll just give us a nice squiggly looking monocyte or some sort of immune cell right here. If we think about what things might royally tick off an immune cell, or what might activate an immune cell and make it go a little bit bonkers, right? So we can think about things like infection. And I'm going to kind of abbreviate things here because I'm lazy. But if we think like, so if you have a chronic strep infection that's not adequately treated, or a fungal infection, or a viral infection that is not adequately treated and it lingers and it bubbles, if you have chronic reactivated EBV, these are the sorts of things that could instigate an immune response, because remember, the immune system's primary job is to protect you from invaders and threats. And infections are one of the biggest threats that it can perceive. So infections, Not surprisingly, going along with that, I would also add dysbiosis. And this is kind of the catch-22, right? Because you have bacterial overgrowth because of the autoimmunity, but you have the autoimmunity because of the dysbiosis, but then the overgrowth is kind of a type of dysbiosis. So you could get a little bit circular here. But this is one of many, many reasons why I've been screaming from the rooftops for years now that we need to be treating SIBO a bit more like a dysbiosis condition rather than a pure overgrowth condition. Because the dysbiosis itself, the imbalance between good and bad bacteria and yeast and critters in your ecosystem, will directly tick off your immune system. So this is one of many reasons why I've been saying that for a while. But dysbiosis either in the gut or elsewhere, keep in mind, you can have dysbiosis elsewhere. You can have dysbiosis of the sinus cavities, of the mouth, which is quite common actually, of the vagina, of the skin. You can have dysbiosis in a lot of different locations, of the stomach, small bowel, colon, all of the above. You can have as many dysbiotic environments as your little heart desires. So don't just isolate yourself to thinking about the gut when you're thinking about dysbiosis. In particular, I would really focus on oral dysbiosis or dysbiosis of the oral cavity and the vaginal tract if you have a vagina. So infections and dysbiosis. Pardon the little clearing of the throat, by the way. I'm still have a little tiny lingering phlegm from COVID, I think. I hope it doesn't make this video really annoying. So we've got infections, we've got dysbiosis. There's also an abundance of research now that toxins can irritate the immune system or instigate an immune response. And I would say you can use the word toxin loosely. I actually really mean toxicants, which is a little bit different. But think of things like heavy metals, BPA, phthalates, parabens, fragrances, like all of the icky kind of chemical crap that we are bombarded with on a day-to-day basis, and of course pesticides and herbicides. So any sort of toxic chemical garbage that's burdening your body is probably putting at least a little bit of burden on your immune system. And then the last thing I want to really point out that's going to directly instigate an immune response is actually injury. I don't think this is appreciated nearly enough, but number one, the priority of your immune system is to protect you from foreign invaders, such as infections or dysbiosis or viral infections, whatever it might be. Number two is that these little guys act like garbage men when you have injured tissue. So if you were to sprain an ankle or have a surgery or have some sort of sprain or strain or fracture or injury, and if it's not healed in an appropriate amount of time, that lingering, festering tissue damage will actually instigate an immune response in and of itself. So if you have any weird, old, funky injuries that have not healed in an appropriate amount of time, that might actually be something for you to turn your attention to. As a side note, fish oil at moderate to high doses is one of my favorite things to use for that. Maybe I could make a video on that another time. And then one more thing is, and this, I hesitate to even put on this little chart, but I'm going to add it with a little asterisk anyway, and that is food. Keep in mind that your body doesn't just start responding to food inappropriately at random. And it's not like your body was sitting there one day and said, you know what would be fun? Freaking out about gluten. Let's do that. Like, typically, in my opinion, this is a secondary occurrence. So this will be a dotted or a dashed arrow. In my opinion, one of these other four came first. Then you start having aberrant responses to food. But if you're already there, if you've already got the autoimmunity or the inflammation, and you've already got some other inflammatory stuff cooking, and you have a food response, like a food sensitivity or a food allergy that you are still consuming, then yes, the food can be one of several driving factors here. But please don't think that a food sensitivity was like the very first thing that instigated the immune response, because that's simply not true. And then, of course, we can think about other things like nutritional deficiencies, excess of unhealthy foods like sugar and omega-6 fats and trans fats. We can think about things like stress or lack of sleep. Anything that throws the body out of balance is probably going to have an effect on the immune system. But as far as like the big handful that I would think about first, these tend to be the big four for autoimmunity in general. Now, like I said, most of your focus should be over here and just making sure that you are a healthy, strong person and you're managing your stress well, you're getting enough sleep, it's good quality sleep, you're getting exercise, you're getting good nutrition, you're getting enough vitamins and minerals and fiber. All of those things should be 80 to 90% of your focus. So that's all over here. And I will add too that one really important nutrient for autoimmune disease in particular is vitamin D. So if you're not measuring your vitamin D at least once a year, I would get on that and just take a peek and see where you're at. And then you could adjust your supplementation and your sunlight dosage appropriately. But I find that that's especially helpful for autoimmunity, which is essentially what we're working with right now. Last but not least, like I said, you can spend about 10 or 20% of your time down here on the target tissue. So this can be 10 or 20% of your focus overall. The couple of things that I have seen most beneficial for this sort of autoimmunity specifically, so the anti-vinculin post-infectious IBS autoimmunity, my couple top favorite things for this, I guess I don't need markers anymore, I'll just put them down. My favorite things for this are prokinetics, which I have sung from the rooftops for years now. I have other videos on prokinetics. If you don't know what they are or how to use them or which one is the best one, just go check out my other videos. But prokinetics can be really great at priming the system and getting the motility to run more smoothly while it's still compromised. Dr. Pimentel has actually said numerous times now that people with anti-vinculin antibodies need to be on a prokinetic for a minimum of 5 years. So if you do have this type of autoimmunity, I would take out stock in whatever your favorite product is because you're going to be on it for a while, more than likely. Keep in mind, though, that he's doing things in a very conventional medicine-y kind of way. He's not thinking about all of this stuff. He's probably not measuring vitamin D. He's not thinking about like antioxidants, and he doesn't seem to give a crap about nutrition overall beyond the low fermentation diet. So if the prokinetics are your only tool and you're not doing the other holistic stuff, maybe that's where people need them for 5 years. But maybe if you're doing the other holistic stuff, you would need it for less time. I'm just quoting his number for what it's worth. But like I said, prokinetics can help run the motility more smoothly and promote motility while your system is still recovering and while you're trying to regenerate these nerves. I have also found that lion's mane mushroom is really, really helpful for these folks in particular. My favorite brand is Real Mushrooms. Easy enough to remember. Just type into Google, or I'll try to put a link in the description. I think it's just realmushrooms.com and it pops right up, but they actually make their supplements out of the fruiting body of the lion's mane mushroom instead of the mycelium. There's another popular brand called Host Defense. I have not recommended those supplements for a number of years because they're all mycelium based and they don't have any of the active constituents that are really going to help regenerate these nerves. So for mushrooms, I don't like Host Defense. I really like Real Mushrooms. So that's the brand that you want to go with, in my opinion. Gaia also has a good one, and I think there's maybe another one that I'm forgetting off the top of my head. But all right, prokinetics, lion's mane mushroom, and then honestly, anything that promotes this gut-brain connection and this vagus nerve kind of tone, I think could be really helpful. So I've done videos on this channel about that topic, and we have some episodes on the IBS Freedom podcast about those topics. So think about things like stress management or stress reduction, yoga, meditation, just getting enough sleep is great for vagal tone, a hobby, like anything that brings your soul joy or makes you feel connected and loved and supported, like all of those feel-good, happy hormones and peptides generally go hand in hand with improved vagal tone. So anything that you could do to bring your life joy or happiness or connectedness, I think that will go a long way here, as well as things again like yoga, Tai Chi, maybe even acupuncture. I could see a lot of different alternative medicine therapies being really helpful for this. There's even TENS unit vagal nerve stimulation that can be helpful, but I don't recommend that for everybody. There's a lot of different options, but I think anything that you can do to get this gut-brain connection going better and improve vagal tone is going to be really helpful. And again, I've got a video, I think I have a video on this channel called like top 10 or top 12 ways to stimulate your vagus nerve. So I would check that out. And then we have a whole episode about the vagus nerve on the IBS Freedom podcast that you could check out. But those are the big three as far as like managing this side of the puzzle, the 10-20%. Prokinetics, lion's mane mushroom, and vagal nerve stimulation or vagal tone improving things, something to improve the gut-brain connection here. But really, most of your focus needs to be in this world, working on the dysbiosis, the infections, unresolved injuries or tissue damage, toxicities or chemical exposures, maybe food sensitivities and food allergies. If you already have this, maybe this is a thing, but again, please don't think that this is like your primary root cause, because it's not. And then things like stress management or stress reduction, getting good quality sleep, making sure your vitamin D is a nice, healthy, high level. You could make an argument as well for vitamin A, although I will say that all nutrients are important for the immune system. I mean, we could talk about zinc and the immune system. We could talk about vitamin A and vitamin D and vitamin C. I mean, the list goes on, but I think if there's one or two vitamins that I would focus most of your effort on for autoimmunity specifically, I would say vitamins A and vitamin D. But just getting good, adequate nutrition, making sure you're getting enough vitamins and minerals, these are the things that are really going to help calm down autoimmunity. And then what happens is, as these guys calm down and they're no longer losing their mind and attacking everything, you will see a gradual reduction in anti-vinculin antibodies. And then most likely, between that and the other efforts that you're spending over here, you will see a reduction in your IBS and SIBO symptoms and a clearance of the SIBO. Now keep in mind too, the immune system is built to never forget things. I do think it's possible for it to forget, but it takes a while. A couple of videos ago, I talked about my experience with food sensitivities and how now after 10 years, I'm able to eat dairy again. And I never thought that would be possible because I didn't think it was possible for the immune system to forget that food sensitivity. So I do think the immune system can forget. It just might take a little while. So don't get too frustrated if you've been at this stuff and you've been trying to manage the anti-vinculin antibodies for months or maybe even a year. I do think it can take a while to get those antibodies to come down naturally when you're not taking out your blood, filtering your blood, and then dumping it back into your body. That's kind of a cheater way to do it, but it's not really accessible for most of us. So shy of doing that, I think we just have to be patient and give our body the tools it needs to be healthy and happy and just well functioning from a holistic standpoint. So don't forget to treat the whole person. It's not just the gut. You got to work on the rest of your body too if you want to heal from this, particularly if you have this type of autoimmunity. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that this video gave you ideas and inspiration and maybe a little bit of hope in your journey. If you have anti-vinculin antibodies and you know something that's been helpful for you in the past, comment down below. I think I would love to read about your experience, and I know that other viewers would like to learn from your experience as well. If you have another supplement or another herb or another strategy or a nutritional thing that's been really helpful for you in your journey with post-infectious IBS or post-infectious SIBO, please do share it down below, and I will see you in the next video, which I think will be very juicy. I have some really cool videos scheduled for the fall. I'm waiting on some data to come back in from yet another different stool experiment that I've been working on. So I'm very, very excited to bring that to you guys. It's going to be, honestly, it's going to be pretty earth-shattering. I already have a couple of data sets back in from a few people, and I'm just waiting on one more. But I think that this is going to be a real game changer in the fields of functional medicine as it pertains to the treatment of IBS and SIBO and gut problems. So I won't tease it any more than that. I'm just really excited to bring this to you. And speaking of which, if you couldn't tell by watching my videos, I think I was a mad scientist or maybe a researcher in another lifetime. And I have a lot of ideas for bringing new experiments and new research to this YouTube channel and doing some side-by-side experiments or doing like multiple collection experiments and validating what we are seeing out there in the functional medicine space, and basically trying to help you guys understand what is worth your time and money and what is not. Like, do you believe the hype over here, or can you just say, no, that's rubbish, I need to focus my efforts on something else? And I'm really excited again about this video that I'm kind of teasing, but I don't want to give away. But I will admit, it is a lot of money to do these ongoing stool experiments. So at the request or the suggestion of some of my viewers, I actually created a Patreon. So if you would like to support this channel and my nerdy efforts to do more research and basically get you guys answers so that you know what is valuable to you and what is not, and what you can just leave be and what is just pure hype, I would absolutely love the support, and I appreciate it so much. The link to my Patreon is in the description of this video down below. I would love to see you on Patreon. We have a tier to just support the channel, a tier with access to Discord, and then we have a monthly Q&A tier as well. So there's a couple options for everybody, but thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you in the next video, and I can't wait to reveal this mystery stool testing experiment that I have in the works. Hey guys, if you like this video, be sure to subscribe, ring the bell, click the like button, and leave a comment down below with the videos that you would like to see me do next. Doing all of those really helps support the channel and support my efforts in making as many videos as possible for you guys. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next video.